Highlander Reboot set photos just dropped again, and yeah, I get why the fanbase is losing its mind. This is the first real, concrete peek at the visual language of this modern reimagining, and after months of everyone arguing in circles about how Henry Cavill and Dave Bautista would step into the roles that Christopher Lambert and Clancy Brown basically carved into pop culture in 1986, these images finally gave us something solid to chew on. And honestly, the biggest curveball is Bautista. Because the moment you see him in these photos, you realise the reboot is not playing it safe with the Kurgan. The punk rock anarchist vibe from the 1980s. The shaved head, the scarred neck held together by safety pins, the leather and studs biker nightmare aesthetic. All of that is gone. In its place, Bautista is standing there as this imposing bearded figure in what looks like priest vestments. Heavy religious garb, long hair, full bushy beard. It's such a hard pivot that it immediately changes the kind of villain we're dealing with. What makes it even creepier is the vibe of the actual moment being photographed, because we've got Cavill's Connor MacLeod and Bautista's Kurgan in the same frame, but they're not mid-sword fight. No chaos, no blades swinging, just stillness. And sometimes stillness is way more menacing than action, because it screams, this is confrontation, not a battle, not yet. To me, this strongly points to holy ground. In Highlander lore, holy ground is the only place where mortals can't fight. It's the rule. It's the pressure valve in the whole mythology, because it forces these centuries-old killers to do something that is almost worse than fighting. You have to talk. You have to share space. They have to play psychological chess while their hands are basically tied. So when I say Cavill and Bautista together not fighting, that's where my brain goes immediately. This feels like a confrontation happening under a rule they can't break. Now let's talk about the priest look, because that's the real shockwave. Clancy Brown's Kurgan in the original movie was basically a walking symbol of 1980s urban decay and nihilism. He looked like the apocalypse decided to ride a motorcycle. Everything about him screamed chaos. He was the kind of guy who didn't just break rules, he existed to prove rules were meaningless. Bautista's Kurgan looks like the opposite. He looks ancient, integrated, settled in. And this is scarier in a different way. If the priest outfit is a disguise, then it suggests a predator who has learnt to hide among the flock. He's not a barbarian smashing through the gates anymore. He's a creature that understands human systems, human faith, human hierarchy, and knows how to weaponize them. He looks less like a monster invading a civilization and more like a monster that has learned how to live inside civilization. Basically, a wolf in shepherd's clothing. And I can't stop thinking about how loaded this choice is thematically, because it feels like a direct nod to the original film's most famous church sequence but flipped inside out. In the 1986 classic, the Kurgan's church scene is pure desecration. He storms into a sanctuary, he terrorizes nuns, he licks the hand of a sister, he roars, "I have something to say, it's better to burn out than fade away," and then casually extinguishes candles with his bare hands like he's snuffing out the concept of holiness itself. In that movie, he's an external force of chaos crashing into a place that's supposed to be safe. He is basically the anti-priest. So if the reboot is literally putting the Kurgan in priest vestments, then that's not just a costume choice, that's a statement. If he's posing as clergy, it's a mockery of the sacred that goes way beyond vandalism. It's not, I'm invading your sanctuary, it's, I'm wearing your sanctuary. It suggests he's using holy ground not just as a safe zone, but as a tool. Maybe even a base of operations. Maybe even a psychological weapon. And it also just makes sense in a modern setting. Because look, in 2026, an immortal walking around dressed like an ancient warlord or like a full-on punk demon is going to attract attention instantly. Cameras, phones, social media. A priest is practically invisible in plain sight. People trust them. People step aside. People assume they belong anywhere. Churches, hospitals, orphanages, shelters, funerals, weddings. He can move through it all without anyone blinking. That's the tactical evolution right there. This version of the Kurgan doesn't just hunt heads, he hunts from camouflage. And that adds this layer of intellectual menace that I'm genuinely excited about, because Bautista is one of those guys who people still underestimate as an actor. He's proven in stuff like Blade Runner 2049 and Knock on the Cabin that he can do quiet intensity, moral weirdness, solemn dread. So the idea of him playing a Kurgan who isn't just a berserker but an insidious strategist wearing holiness like a mask, that's not a downgrade from Clancy Brown, it's a different flavour of nightmare. Which brings me to the comparison everyone is going to make, no matter what. Clancy Brown's Kurgan was lightning in a bottle, completely manic, erratic, gleefully sadistic. It fit the operatic, larger-than-life tone of the 80s movie perfectly. If this reboot tried to recreate the exact coked-out barbarian energy beat for beat, it would probably feel like force today, like cosplay, like imitation. And based on these photos, I don't think they're doing that. I think Chad Stahelski and Bautista are being smart and choosing Gravitas instead of imitation. The priest leans into weight and present. Bautista is physically denser and wider than Brown was. Brown might have had a slight height edge, but Bautista's build feels like an immovable object. If Brown was a jagged, serrated knife, Bautista looks like a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet. Even Bautista's age changes the vibe in a way that weirdly works in the character's favour. Bautista had openly talked about anxiety playing the role in his 50s, and yes, Brown was in his 20s when he did it. So on paper, it's a totally different energy, but the reboot can turn that to an advantage. The beard, the long hair, the heavy, weary eyes. He looks like an immortal who's actually lived for 3,000 years. Brown's Kurgan felt like an eternal teenager, boundless destructive energy, always hyped, always ready to burn the world down just to feel something. Bautista's Kurgan, at least visually, gives me this ancient warlord who's bored of humanity but still addicted to the kill vibe. Like he's seen everything, and the only thing that still excites him is talking heads. That old man Kurgan energy fits Bautista perfectly, and instead of fighting his age, the costume seems like it's embracing it. And then there's the other shift that I think is hiding inside the priest concept. It's not just savage, it's potentially zealot. The original Kurgan was a savage from the Russian steppes who enjoyed pain. He felt feral, pure appetite. But when you put the reboot Kurgan in religious robes, it hints at something more ideological. Like he might see the prize not just as a trophy, but as a divine right. Like he believes he's meant to win. Like he's the chosen one in his own twisted theology. And if that's the angle, then the priest attire becomes a warped reflection of his self-image. He's not a murderer to himself. He's a force of inevitability, natural selection with a sermon, a high priest of death. That's exactly the kind of twisted moral compass Bautista can sell, especially because he's played characters before who do horrifying things whilst carrying themselves like it's a duty or fate or some solemn obligation. So if the Kurgan is less party monster and more ritual executioner, I can absolutely see Bautista making that terrifying. If we look at the photos closely, it seems like they're meeting in a church or some equivalent consecrated space, and the Kurgan is the one running it or hiding inside it. The entire power dynamic flips. Now MacLeod isn't just cornered by a monster, he's walking into the monster's house, except the monster's house is a sanctuary where violence is forbidden. And that's where Stahelski specifically gets me excited, because he's a director who understands world building through rules. In John Wick, he turned the Continental Hotel into a version of Holy Ground, a place where killers can't kill, and that restriction became its own kind of suspense engine. He knows the tension of two people who want to murder each other sitting in the same room smiling through their teeth, because the code says they can't go there. So when I connect these dots, these photos start feeling like a promise of a scene that's all pressure and poison. Imagine Bautista's Kurgan delivering a sermon or performing a rite, then locking eyes with Cavill's MacLeod sitting in the back pew. That contrast alone is cinematic. Cavill probably in a modern tactical grounded hero gear while Bautista is draped in flowing robes. The warrior versus the false prophet. And then my brain goes one step further, because this priest angle opens up such a nasty, brilliant tactical update to the mythology. What if the Kurgan is using the confessional? Like literally using a confession as a hunting tool. He could hear people talking about miracles, survivals that make no sense, accidents where someone should have died but didn't, stories about the guy who healed too fast, or that woman who walked away from a crash. In a world of immortals, these are tells, these are breadcrumbs. If he's positioned as a priest, he could quietly map out where the other immortals are hiding without even drawing a sword. This turns him from a wandering hunter into a spider sitting in a web, waiting for prey to stumble into his lap. So yeah, these set photos hint at Kurgan who's evolved. A Kurgan who can smile, blend in, and let society hand him victims on a silver platter. And if the reboot really commits to that idea, then we're not just getting a redo of the original villain. We're getting a modernised nightmare that uses the same mythology but twists the knife in a new direction. The Watcher's angle is a huge part of the reboot talk right now. I should have brought it up because it changes the whole shape of the story. In Highlander lore, mainly the TV series of the franchise, the Watchers are a secret human organisation that tracks immortals. Their whole thing is to observe and record, don't interfere, at least on paper. They keep dossiers, histories, patterns, sightings. Basically, if immortals are the hidden war, the Watchers are the people quietly writing the encyclopedia of that war. Multiple reports say Jeremy Irons is playing an antagonist who leads a secret order called the Watchers, and they are watching immortals, specifically because they see them as a threat to humanity. If Irons' Watchers sees immortals as a threat, that is a built-in excuse for them to go from recording history to trying to control the board. Kurgan could exploit them, infiltrate them, or use their records to find targets faster. That turns him from wandering hunter into a spider with access to everyone's web. The other angle is the Watchers could be the reason why he blends in as a priest at all. Watchers are hunting or monitoring immortals. The smartest immortal in the room stops looking like a movie villain and starts looking like a person nobody questions. A priest look is social invisibility. The camouflage concept becomes way more logical if the world has a human organisation actively collecting data. Apart from these photos, there are very few random shots floating around of Bautista and Henry Cavill holding what are clearly CGI swords. And honestly, those don't tell me much at all. Like, yeah, it's cool to see them gripping blades, and it's nice what little swords are happening confirmation, but there's no real context, no story beats, no character dynamics, no hint of what the scene actually is. It's basically just, here are the guys, here are the swords. That's it. But even with that, I'm not gonna lie, I'm genuinely hyped because after how long this reboot felt like it was being ignored or stuck in limbo, seeing any real movement is exciting. From everything I've dug into and tracked, it finally feels like the production has actually gained momentum. These new glimpses, even the meaningless sword-holding ones, tell me we're past the phase of wishful thinking and back into real, tangible progress.